Hi, this is Jim Cunningham. We're going to talk about retiring in California, the pros and the cons. So I live in California. A lot of people, they say, I'm getting out of California for whatever reason. A lot of people move to California. In fact, the number one uh, place that people came from in California, I believe it was last year, was New Jersey. So a lot of people moving from the East Coast to the West Coast. So pros, beautiful climate, diversity on a lot of levels, diversity of climate, right? You can ski, you can have beaches, deserts, mountains, oceans, diversity of people, diversity of political thought, believe it or not. People who live east of Highway 5 tend to lean one political way, generally speaking, and the people who live west of Highway 5 oftentimes lean the other way. You can make an exception for Orange County, whatever it might be. Just a real variety of people in our state. California, but it's been said California is ungovernable because it's so big and it is so diverse. We're the most diverse society in human history. 120 languages are translated in our court system. 120. That's a lot of languages. I didn't even know there were that many languages. Lifestyle benefits. It's a great vibe in California. It's not for everyone, but it is for a lot of people. Inheritance taxes, and spoiler alert, California does not have inheritance tax. California does have protections for property taxes that we'll talk about that. California has a fantastic healthcare system. So a lot throughout the state of California, many areas that people, especially retirees, live, the quality of healthcare is really second to none. We do have an income tax, and I'm going to go over that, why that may not be so bad for many people. If you're a lotto winner, for example, there's no state income tax on lotto winnings. So, go figure. Cost of living can be higher, and I stress can. It really depends on where you live. And of course, the crowds and traffic, which I'm not going to really talk about too much because really you can avoid it by not going to the crowds and the traffic. But we do have our fair amount of, in the more urban areas, crowds and traffic. So that for some people is a con. For some people, that's a pro. Some people love living in a city. This, of course, is an example of natural beauty. If you're watching this, this is the Golden Gate Bridge. I happen to have taken this picture. That's why the horizon isn't exactly flat. But I'm Jim Cunningham. I'm a partner at Cunningham Legal. I have 30 years experience as a lawyer. We have offices throughout California. I'm a certified specialist in estate planning, trust, and probate law, a real estate broker, securities and insurance licensed, and a pilot, but not current. This is very important. So we're going to go through a lot of concepts. This is not legal advice. This is very, very important. Legal advice is sitting down one-on-one with a lawyer and going over your individual situation. When I say you, there's no attorney-client relationship. So what I mean by you is I am making this so you understand it, right? Rather than using a lot of extra words, but there is no attorney-client relationship. And basically don't watch this and go out and do a bunch of stuff without getting appropriate legal and financial and accounting advice. So California, believe it or not, is a very popular place to retire, and it's only getting more popular. So again, diverse climate, diverse people, a lot of outdoor activities, tremendous amount of cultural events. Really, California is really the epicenter of popular culture in many ways in Los Angeles, also the epicenter of tech, right? In many ways in the San Francisco Bay Area, much like New York is the epicenter of the financial world. So in 2020, 13% of Californians were over 65. That number is set to increase to 23% by 2040. So the state's getting grayer, right? And people are staying here. People are aging. Some people are leaving. We have a huge retirement population, and we have a lot of natural amenities. We have a protected seashore, meaning the beaches, by and large, with very few exception, are open to the public. That is not the case in other states. And we have national parks and state parks, as well as, Yosemite. That's fantastic. Also, California, and this is a biggie, does not tax Social Security income or, again, as I said, lottery winnings. But this is really important. So your Social Security income is not taxed. And that is really important because that goes on top of your other income. So when you're looking at what the tax is living in California, you really need to be mindful of that. And the average effective property tax rate is frankly not high. This is even if you buy a new property, even if you buy a property, we're capped at 1%, and we'll cover that. So some reasons to retire in California, San Francisco, LA, San Diego are great urban centers. There are also tend to be very expensive. Smaller cities can be easier to navigate and less expensive. So, Sacramento and the Sacramento region is a popular area to retire. The desert area is a popular area to retire, meaning sort of that area east of Los Angeles. And these are typically going to be lower cost of housing and kind of easier to navigate. Theater, people coming from the East Coast can suffer Broadway withdrawal. We have we have very active, robust theater in California: Berkeley, La Jolla, San Diego, LA, Costa Mesa, Ojai, where I grew up, as well as Pasadena. So many of these national groups are coming through. Music, lots of music festivals. I don't know if anyone who's retiring would go to Coachella, but it's out there in the desert. Napa's got Bottle Rock, Reggae on the River, Stern Grove Festival in San Francisco, Newport and Monterey Jazz Festivals, and Splash House. So a lot going on culturally. This is really cool. So if you're a lifelong learner, and if you're watching this video or listening to it, you are likely a lifelong learner, as I am. This is really cool. If you're 60 or over, the tuition is waived at the California State University system. A lot of people don't know this. Now, tuition at Cal State can be not cheap, right? You can also audit courses at the community college, and then you can apply for a fee waiver at one of California's 116 community colleges, but those tuition are typically much lower. So a great way to stay involved, a great way to keep your brain active. And California largely has a very mild climate where you're not battling ice and snow and hurricanes and things like that to get to enjoy these amenities. We have 200 public beaches. It's a hiking and surfing paradise, as well as the state and national parks. So even more reasons to retire in California, if those aren't enough, and we will get to the pros and cons and really talk about money. Even more reasons: food. This is a biggie. A third of the food in the United States and 3/4 of the fruits and nuts are grown in California, which, take a lot of people say that it is the land of fruits and nuts, literally and perhaps figuratively as well. But generally speaking, broadly speaking, the fresh food is fresher, tends to have lower prices, and there's more variety. In California, we had an attorney move from the Midwest, and he said, I've never lived in California, and I didn't know there were 7 kinds of lettuce. So you go to the store and you have this extreme variety, and even going to, different grocery stores are going to have different variety. A lot of foods from around the world in California, grown specifically for certain cuisines. So it really is a place where you can eat healthy and clean. And if you're into fine dining, there's that as well. But by and large, you can eat fresh fruits and vegetables that are reasonably priced. We have 950 golf courses. Pebble Beach, there's a picture there of the Monterey Bay area. Torrey Pines are the biggies, but we've got 950 golf courses. They're not all $500 a round. I am a member at a public course, if part of a men's group, and I think it's $30 a round. So, and it's a great course. So, wine, 90% of wine produced in the United States is produced in California, 90%. 49 of 58 counties. We've got big names in wine: Napa, Sonoma, Mendocino, Monterey, San Luis Obispo, and Santa Barbara counties. So really just a great place to enjoy, if you enjoy wine, to enjoy wine and golf and food and the natural beauty. And really in those retirement years, when those sort of go 60 years and the slow go 70s and the no go 80s, you can take that time span and really enjoy all of the things that California has to offer. So you see these rankings of colleges, and you see rankings of best places to retire and worst places to retire. So I do not want to offend anyone who might be looking at this slide or reside in one of these states or thinking about going to one of these states. But Kiplinger recently released the bottom 10 states to retire in, and in order of worst to going not worst. By the way, if you're watching this is a picture of Kentucky. Kentucky's a beautiful state. It's Kentucky, then New Jersey, then Mississippi, then Rhode Island, then Oklahoma, then Louisiana, then New York, then Washington, then Arkansas, then Illinois. We do have a fair amount of clients coming from New Jersey to retire, coming from New York to retire, and Illinois. And many clients retire in Washington, not so much Oklahoma, but we do have a fair amount of clients retiring in Oklahoma. A lot of people do retire in Washington, and how they rank this, look, I don't know. I don't know what the ranking is. The other 15 honorable mentions, I won't list all the names, but the four that kind of stick out are Oregon, Tennessee, Texas, and Nevada. So a lot of Californians, they say, hey, I want to leave California. I'm looking at Oregon. I'm looking at Nevada. Tennessee and Texas are kind of the ones where we see a lot of people. A lot of our clients from California who choose to leave California do goes to those states, and just understand that this is kind of according to Kiplinger, which, they're not the be all and the end all, but they put these in the bottom half. California, by the way, is not in the bottom half of states to retire. So retirement in general, and by the way, retirement means different things to different people, right? Retirement means I can do whatever I want and you still may be working, right? Retirement means different things. But broadly speaking, retirement comes with, for the vast majority of people, financial constraints. It doesn't matter how much money you have. And if you don't have much money, what I'm about to say is going to be shocking. I meet with people who have very large estates and they're worried about outliving their money. They just are. They may have in the tens of millions, 100 million, whatever it might be. They're worried about outliving their money. So they have similar concerns. And I think for those people, objectively speaking, that financial constraint is probably a mental financial constraint, not an actual financial constraint. But for many retirees, there is a significant financial constraint because most retirees live on a fixed income. This is how much I'm budgeting this month, and this is all I'm getting. I'm not getting any more. I can't work overtime. I can't do these other things. And cost of living and taxes are a factor that is easily measured. So when you're evaluating where to retire, and you say, should I retire in California? Should I retire outside of California? So if you're outside of California and you're thinking about retiring to California, I think a lot of these, in getting ready for this, a lot of these, surveys and rankings really are fixed on costs, taxes, cost of living, and those are very easy to quantify. I would say quality and availability of healthcare, very important, actually easy to quantify as well. Lifestyle. This is the tough one that's hard. It's kind of hard to measure. Is lifestyle beyond the money? It's harder to measure because it's highly individualistic. So if you're a person who says, I'm retiring at 60, I want to ski every day, right? That's my thing. California may be a great place to retire. It may not be a great place to retire, right? Colorado may be better. Utah may be better for whatever reason. And we're going to talk about Colorado and Utah in a little bit. The snow, typically is better in many years than in California. You don't have that Sierra cement. So it depends on what you want to do. If you say, I want to surf, California may be a great place to do that. There are other states that do have surf, like Hawaii. And Hawaii, we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. So it's hard to measure. I think, again, it's very highly individualistic. I will say this, living in California, I've lived in California my whole life. The weather, we take that for granted as Californians. We don't know how good we have it. So if you have always been in California and never left, you might want to spend some time. If you say, hey, we're going to move to Tennessee, you might want to move to Tennessee and rent a place for a year or two, right? Rather than selling everything in California. Because another thing about California, certainly if you're coming from a coastal area or higher priced area, sometimes you leave and it's very hard to come back. And because prices, go up, they might not go up, who knows? But for many people, it's very hard to come back. So risks, there are four main risks to a successful retirement. And then we're going to get to the pros and cons of living in California. Number one risk is outliving your money. I think hands down, when I'm talking about successful retirement, I am talking about money, right? And you do not want to outlive your money. You don't want to be worried about outliving your money. This is something that is probably the number one concern. I've met with so many people who are retiring or looking at retirement or have been retired for a long time. That is the number one concern. And again, no matter how much you have, if you're 65, you're probably going to live to 85. And you know what? You might live past 100. So that's a long, long time. And inflation, that's another one. The rising cost of goods and services you actually consume as a retiree. This is very important because what retirees consume is not necessarily what other people, of a different age bracket are consuming. So looking at healthcare, long-term care, we cover this in other webinars, ensuring that risk of if I need help in the home, how do I pay for it? Well, yeah, you can pay from savings, but sometimes it makes sense to insure that risk so that, when you put $100,000 into the machine, into maybe a long-term care policy, you might get back $300,000 in benefit. And if you don't use it, it goes to your heirs. that 100,000 goes to your heirs. So we've covered that in other webinars. And if that's important to you, then I would encourage you to take a look at it on our YouTube page. Market volatility. We've covered this again. We covered this in one of our most recent retirement webinars with Ascent Wealth Management. You do not want to be, if you are invested in the stock market, timing the stock market does not work. Objectively speaking, because if it did work, people would be timing the market. Okay. It does not work. And I would say the biggest risk that people have with market volatility is they pull out of the stock market they panic, they pull out, and then you might get a bump. And we covered this in the webinar. If you're out of the market, the 10 top days in the last 10 years, your return's like, 10% of what it would otherwise be. So, and again, I would encourage you to take a look at that. And taxes, RMD, what's an RMD? Required minimum distribution. So required minimum distribution is the amount that you must take when you reach 73 now, and then in 2033 when you're 75. But once you hit that certain age, if you are not working and have a 401k or have not converted to a Roth, anything in a traditional IRA, you have to start taking out money based on your age. So it's a percentage of your IRAs that you have based on age, and that must be distributed. And that really can spike clients' income. So what we see is maybe in the 60s, not a lot of income, not a lot of tax, not a compelling reason to leave California, right? But once you start those RMDs, then you're like, wow, now that my income tax bill is going up, my California income tax bill. We'll talk about a way to mitigate that. And then no state death taxes, right? Property tax is low in California, but if you're in a state that can just vote in a property tax hike, my parents moved to Texas, their property taxes are about 3%. Now, values are a little bit lower than they are in California, not much, right? Their taxes are 3%. They don't have state income tax, but they're always going to have that property tax. So retiring in California, what are the cons? What are the downsides of retiring in California? Well, California taxes are higher on high income earners in California. So California does not have a flat tax. So there are two ways of taxing income. You can have a flat tax that taxes 5%, so 5 cents on the dollar for every dollar of income. So if you make $1 million a year or $100,000 a year, you're paying the same percentage, 5 cents on every dollar. California has a graduated tax system, much like the federal government. So what that means is if you're a single filer who earns $54,000 a year, you're going to pay just under $1,000 in state income tax. It's actually not a lot, right? So, and remember, California doesn't tax Social Security. So if you have investments that maybe aren't paying dividends, you're living on Social Security, or you have money in IRAs and you're not taking that, you haven't hit your RMD, and you retire at 60, you may find that your income's just not that high. So you're really not going to be subject to state income tax like you had been when you were working. Okay. A single filer who earns $418,000. So now we're getting into the higher income earners. The tax is $36,000. That's about 9%. And then if you somebody who earns $698,000, the tax is $68,000 or about 10%. So it's very important to understand that California has a graduated tax system. And this is really important when we talk about Roth conversions. So if you have an IRA and you want to convert that to a Roth, if you convert it while you're a California resident, you're going to be subject to these higher taxes. And again, these are single filers, not joint filers. Taxes are higher when a business is sold. So many of our clients are business owners. Many people, when they retire, they sell their business. Kind of obvious, right? So you have a business, you're going to sell it. When we look at California versus Florida, there's a big difference. So our example here is Abel sells the assets of his California-based auto body repair business for $10 million. He's subject to state income tax of up to $1.15 million. Ouch. That's a lot of money. That may be a reason. Now, whether you can do it with a California-based business is a different question. But if there was a mechanism to avoid that state income tax, it probably starts being worth it to take a look at that, right? And then there's an additional 1.5% tax when you sell the assets of an S Corp. In addition to the income tax you pay, you have to pay a 1.5% tax, kind of like a sales tax. That's on top of a $2 million tax bill. So the grand total is about $3.3 million. So about a third of that value. So this is really important. If you're selling a business and you say, I'm going to get $10 million for my business, you're not going to keep 10 million. You're going to keep 6.7 if you're in California, maybe less. It depends, right? Depends on what the structure of the deal, it depends on the term, it depends on a lot of things. I'm presuming this is capital gain. If this business were located in Florida, the tax would be $2 million because it'd be long-term capital gain. So a $1.3 million delta, that is enough. That is enough of a reason for many people to either move their business if they can, if it's movable. Now, a California-based auto body repair shop, kind of tough to move. But if you have an information-based business, if you've got a service-based, and this is why a lot of companies move out of California, they move out because the founders are going to sell their business, right? But if that's the type of business you have, that's something you may want to take a look at. I would say time horizon on that is probably 5 years, at least 5, maybe 8. So it's a longer term thing. It's not like, hey, I got my letter of intent signed. I want to move my business out of California. How do I do that? Probably not going to work. All right, so this is very important. Roth conversion of an existing IRA pays California state income tax. So what am I talking about here? Again, we cover this in other webinars. What is a Roth conversion? So you take a traditional IRA and you convert that to a Roth, and then you pay the tax on it, right? So if I have $1 million IRA, in our example, Charlie here, let's say Charlie has $1 million IRA, and he converts that IRA to a Roth IRA, there's going to be an income tax liability associated with that. Let's say $400,000. Charlie's going to have to use $400,000 of savings that's not in the IRA to pay the tax. Now, you may say that is crazy. Why would you pay tax when you have the ability to defer the tax? The reason you would pay the tax is that this is the big reason. Roth IRAs do not have a required minimum distribution. They just don't. If they do have a required minimum distribution, if the law changes, which maybe it could, there is no income tax because the tax has already been paid. So a traditional IRA, if you have $1 million in there and you take out $100,000, you got to pay $100,000 in income tax. If you have $1 million in a Roth, then when that Roth distribution 100,000 comes out, there's no income tax on it because you've already paid it. By the way, that's if that Roth grows from $1 million to $2 million, right? And then you take all the $2 million out, you're not paying any tax. So this is a math calculation. We cover this in other webinars. This has to do with tax bracket arbitrage, meaning this tends to work up to about a 22% federal tax bracket, which is in the several $100,000. And in our example here, Charlie retires in 2019. That year, he sells his home in LA, moves to Tampa. He's done. He buys a home there, gets a new doctor, gets a new dentist, gets a new hairstylist, and he is out of California. So if you're playing this game where, well, I'll rent something in Nevada and say I'm not in California, it's not going to work, right? So the Franchise Tax Board is very aggressive on this. We help many clients with this analysis and work with other professionals on it. But here's what Charlie does. Charlie moves to Tampa in 2019, and then in 2020, 21, and 22, and 23, Charlie converts his Roth. So he's not working. He's living on savings maybe, but he converts his IRA to a Roth, right? It's his $1 million IRA. He does $250,000 a year. Charlie then moves back to California and moves to Napa. He's avoided state income tax on his IRA, on his Roth IRA conversion. So important tax planning strategy. A lot of people look at this. Some choose to pull the trigger, as it were, and some don't. It just depends. Certainly, if you have a taxable estate, meaning if your estate's over 13 million, you really do want to look at a Roth conversion because that money that's paid in tax is no longer in your estate. By the way, in 2026, the death tax is 45%. In California, the income tax, the combined income tax rates are 50. That's 95% tax on an IRA. So if you have a large estate, if you have a taxable estate, up to 95% of that IRA can end up going to taxes. So cost of housing. So this is, kind of a hot topic. And in California, we have 6 of the 10 most expensive zip codes in the United States. Atherton, Ross, which are Northern California, Los Altos Hills, Beverly Hills, Newport Beach, and Silicon Valley, which is an amalgamation of multiple zip codes. But these are all places where you have high wages, very mild weather, lots of cultural amenities, coastal. These are places where people want to live. Okay. So by the way, if you're living in California and living in these areas and you go, it's just so expensive, I can't get my kids to, I can't afford a place here. People from all over the world want to come to California. This is not just the United States. So you may be outside of the United States watching this. People from all over the world want to live in California because it's great, right? Now, some people say, well, I'm tired of it, or it's got these problems, or whatever it is, but there's a huge demand for people living in California. The median price for a single family home is, as the time of we're doing this webinar, is $843,000. That is double the national average of $394. So even affordable senior housing can be run $2,000 a month. That being said, if you're watching this on a video I just pulled up today, there's a house for sale in Auburn, California, which is between San Francisco and the Sierra Nevada. It is above the fog and below the snow, so it's almost kind of a banana belt, if you will. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, 2,000 square feet on a little bit under an acre, and this house is listed for about $580,000. So it's not, it's not a mansion, but it's also not 800,000. It's something that can be affordable for a broader set of people. Retiring in California. Just adjust my mic here. Retiring in California pros. So let's talk about the benefits of retiring in California. Well, the natural beauty. If you're listening to this and not watching it, it's a picture of a golf course by the ocean. So natural beauty of California. Prop 13 protection. So when you buy a home in California, the taxes are capped at 1% of the value of the property as of the date of purchase or transfer. The taxes can only go up 2% a year. So they tax at 1%, they can only go up 2% a year. You can move out of the home and the taxes don't go up. So you can rent it out. So this is when you buy a home, you're protected by Prop 13. Even if you buy a home in 2024. So we're in 2024, you buy it this year, you're protected by Prop 13. Pretty cool. So Abel bought a home in Santa Clara, which is Northern California, in 2003 for $500,000. Now it's worth $2 million. This is not an uncommon situation. It went up 4x. But instead of the property taxes being $20,000 a year, which is 1%, they're $7,500 a year. Abel is saving $12,500 per year in retirement, and needs is very important. I ran a calculation assuming that if you're saving $12,500, that means you don't need that income. And that means that Abel needs to save $250,000 less in retirement using a 5% a factor. So let me say this another way. Prop 13, if you have Prop 13 and you move to another state, you sell the house, you lose that Prop 13 protection. It's gone. If you want to come back to California, your taxes are going to be likely coming up. Prop 19 lets you move your tax base. So if you went for a hot minute and came back to California, conceivably you could pick that up again. But the reality is, for most people, when they leave California, they lose that Prop 13 protection, because you don't take that to Tennessee. You don't take that to Nevada because they don't have Prop 13. It's California property tax structure. So very, very important, caps the taxes. And this is a picture of Napa. Absolutely beautiful. Just thrown in natural beauty. Can't help it. No income tax on Social Security benefits. So very important. California residents do not pay state income tax on Social Security benefits. Other states do. Colorado, Connecticut, Kansas, Minnesota, Montana, New Mexico, Rhode Island, Utah, and Vermont all tax Social Security benefits. Now, we see a lot of our clients moving to Colorado, Montana, and Utah, right? So a lot of clients are moving to those states. Understand that your Social Security benefits will be taxed. So Baker earns $100,000 in retirement, including $50,000 in Social Security benefits. Baker moves to Utah from California. And Baker's income tax bill on his Social Security benefits is $2,425. By staying in California, Baker saves $2,425 in taxes yearly, meaning Baker needs to have $48,500 less in retirement. So again, this is that 5% factor, $2,425 divided by 5. So it's a different way of looking at it. So if by moving to these other states, just mentally, you may have to have slightly more in retirement savings to cover that tax. And we have a picture of Muir Woods, the Redwoods, Marin County. Absolutely stunning. California's income tax system can be fairer than other states. And if you're watching this and pay a lot of tax, you're like, Jim, you are off your rocker. You are nuts. I'm just switching this thing off. But hear me out. California has a graduated income tax system. The more income you earn, the higher the rate. Many states have what is called a flat tax, meaning it's a single rate. Arizona, Colorado again, Georgia, Idaho. A lot of our clients move to Arizona, Colorado, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Michigan, Mississippi, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Utah. Again, a lot of our clients move to Utah. all have a flat tax, and Iowa plans on having one here. They don't have it, but they're planning on having one. So Charlie has 75,000 in retirement income. 50,000 is from Social Security and 25,000 from a pension. And the Colorado state income tax is $2,691. Had Charlie stayed in California, his income tax bill would have been $321. Again, another couple $1,000s a year. Now, this may not be needle moving to you in retirement, but it might be. You know, that extra $2,200 could be used to maybe take a trip, could be used to, do whatever you want to do in retirement, right? And here is a picture of Stinson Beach, the lagoon side. So absolutely gorgeous houses and beautiful day. Again, the natural beauty of California. California has no death tax. Very, very important. So when you die, and I'm using the term death tax, not in a political sense, but I'm talking about the tax that is imposed at death. So there are state inheritance taxes. There are state death taxes as well. So it depends if sometimes a state will tax you when you inherit. Sometimes they tax the estate itself. Broadly speaking, these are death taxes. California, believe it or not, and please do not let the state legislature know, there was a constitutional amendment in 1981 that just took out the California death tax, believe it or not. So Washington, Oregon, Nebraska, Minnesota, Iowa, Illinois, Kentucky, Maryland, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Vermont, Maine, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Hawaii have some form of additional death tax beyond the federal death tax. Washington's is the highest. This is really important. If you're a resident of these states, all of your assets are subject to inheritance tax. If you are death tax, if you own real estate in these states, real property. So if you have that vacation home in Oregon, that is subject to Oregon death tax. Oregon death tax is 16% on amounts over $1 million. Washington is higher. Washington is 20%. So our example here is Delta has a $5 million estate and dies a resident of Washington state. Her estate owes on a $5 million estate $640,000. Not a small number, okay? That goes to Washington. Had Delta been a California resident, that bill would have been $0. So that's on a $5 million estate. And it's not 20 because it's graduated. The first 2 and change goes tax-free. So that's why it's not $1 million. And here's an absolutely gorgeous picture of Yosemite. Just stunning beauty. California, if you've never been to California, it's just unbelievably gorgeous. Yes, we have our problems, but the natural beauty, people who leave California, that's the one common thread I hear from clients, because they leave and they go, wow, the natural beauty is just, you kind of, maybe you don't see it after a while. I don't know, but certainly a lot of people miss it. So if you're watching this, I have the most interesting man in the world in here from the Dos Equis commercials, a little humor. Community property, adjusted cost basis at first death. And I'll tell you why I have the most interesting man in the world on here. Abel and Baker are married. They buy NVIDIA as community property. If you have been asleep for, 3 months and don't know what NVIDIA is, it is a huge company now. I think it's number 3 in the world. Baker's gone way up real fast. Baker dies. So Abel and Baker own this as community property. Baker dies. It's worth $10 million. Abel can sell that $10 million stock portfolio and not pay any capital gains tax. Let me say that again. In a community property state, married couple or married couple can sell that property without paying any capital gains tax. If they had been Colorado residents, the basis would only be stepped up to $5 million. So when Abel goes to sell that stock, the alive spouse, that $5 million be subject to gain and pay capital gains tax. So this is huge, all right? We don't want, so this is where the most interesting man comes in. We don't want our spouses to die, but if they do, it's good to be a resident of a community property state or have a community property trust. Now, this is fairly new. If you're in New Jersey, New York, Colorado is not a community property state, okay? If you're in one of these jurisdictions, 4 states allow you to do a community property trust, and it's a bit of wrangling. And there's a question mark as to whether it will actually work. So if you talk to people who do this, they say, yeah, it's going to work. But behind closed doors, lawyers kind of look at this and they go, gee, I wonder if the federal government's going to really allow this. This is fairly recent. And the idea here is you have a separate property resident who puts property into a trust that is deemed under state law community property. Okay. So there's a planning mechanism. So you don't necessarily have to move. So the logic goes to a community property state with this community property trust. Very important to understand, if you leave California and move to Colorado, which is not a separate property state, that gets really complicated really fast, because you're in Colorado, which is a separate property state. The question is, when you die, what do you have that is community property? Well, if it's real estate in California, it might still be community property. Mostly, it might start diminishing community property. It's a very complex body of law. Certainly, if you move to Colorado and you have this $10 million in NVIDIA stock, you will not get an adjusted cost basis. Okay, so if you're a resident and that account is in Colorado, I'm not seeing an argument for that. So we don't want people to die, but when they do, you want to be in a community property state. And here is a lovely view of Mount Tamalpais, which is known as Mount Tam, again in Marin County. Just another natural beauty of California, beautiful California sunset with the water, and just a real nice place to be. California can be a good place for low-income retirees, and we're about toward the end. So if you have any questions, if you're watching this live, go ahead and post the questions. And if you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and post a comment, put a question in the comments. So California can be a good place to retire if you're low income. So effective 2024, there's no asset test for Medi-Cal, which is California's implementation of Medicaid. Which means Medi-Cal can pick up your Medicare Part B premium. This is called Medi-Medi. Only the income is considered. So if you're low income, you might be able to qualify for Medi-Cal even if you have assets. So here's an example. Granny medically qualifies for long-term care. Maybe she had a stroke. She goes to Lazy Acres Skilled Nursing Care Facility. That's an abbreviation, SNF, Skilled Nursing Care Facility. Granny receives $22,035 in Social Security, has a home worth $1 million in the bank, and $1 million in IRAs. Granny has a $3 million estate, people. While there, her cost of care is $12,000 a month, meaning the cost of the facility every month is $12,000. Granny will qualify for Medi-Cal. Her share of cost is $2,000, so she gets to keep a whopping $35. The state pays the other $10. Okay. And they pay that January to November, because in December, Granny takes her minimum distribution of $50,000 from her IRA, and that money is what is called income in the month received. It is income in the month received. It kicks Granny off of Medi-Cal for that month, but back in January, she's back on again. And so long as there's no probate, there is no recovery, meaning the state could pay out $500,000 in benefit. So long as Granny's estate does not land in probate court, this is one really good reason to avoid probate in California. There is no state recovery. If it ends up in probate court, there is recovery. So a properly funded living trust can avoid probate court in this situation. And here's a beautiful view of a golf course down in the desert in winter. So I don't think you can see the snow in this picture, but I took it. There was snow. But California is one of those places where you can enjoy golf or hiking or surfing, and it's kind of balmy weather, and there's snow on the mountaintop. So beautiful place. This brings us to the end of our content. If you have questions, put them in the Q&A. If you're watching this live, if you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and put those in the comments. We have offices throughout California, in Northern and Southern California. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, because it really, and you click the bell and then it appears in your feed. So it's really good to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Next is a trust administration checklist for California. I'll be covering that April 11, 2024. We're going to go through all the stuff that you need to think about when a person stops becoming trustee. Now, let me tell you, if you have a living trust, when the person who sets up the living trust, most of the time, they're trustee. When that person stops being trustee, that is a really big deal in California. Whether it's death, incapacity, resignation, whatever it is, there's a lot of stuff to do. And not everything that needs to be done is in the trust. So The trust is a very incomplete picture of all the things that need to be done. It's not just enough. It's not enough just to follow the terms of the trust. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that you need to do as a trustee.